Finally, October of 1995 saw the conclusion to the Corellian Trilogy arrive, Showdown at Centerpoint by Roger McBride Allen. Compared to the Jedi Academy trilogy, the Corellian trilogy, at least cover-wise, had a bit of an upgrade because while Drew Struzan had done all of the hardback covers since the Truce Epicura, this trilogy was the first time that he did paperback covers as well. Showdown at Centerpoint did pretty well. It made it to number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list for the week of October 1st, 1995. It was ultimately on the list for 4 weeks. So my recollections of this one, yeah, I didn't have many of them. I knew it ended and I knew that a certain character died, but that was pretty much it. I was hoping from reading book 1 and book 2, which were just full of setup, that the execution and the climax of all that setup would be really, really exciting, but I don't know. And on the Princess Leia costume count, we really only get one described outfit, and she is wearing Mara Jade's clothes. But it does say that she's been weeks without her clothes because everything that she brought was left behind or destroyed, so fair enough. So, a brief summary. As Luke, Lando, and company race to Centerpoint Station to figure out what is going on, Han is forced to make an emergency landing on Solonia, and the Solo children discover Draal's repulsor, but are quickly captured by Thraken in the Human League. So first off, I have to say that compared to some of the other books so far that Bantam released, Allen did pretty well on the gender parity front. We've got, of course, Leia, and then we've got female characters that we've seen before, like Mara Jade and Gariel Captason. But then we have all the new women that Allen created and introduced, like Drachmis, the Solonian. Actually, all the Solonians we meet are women. And then we've got Valindi Kalinda, the intelligence officer who I love. We've got Tendra Rizant. And in this one, we meet Jenica Sonson, who's the sole remaining officer in charge of Centerpoint Station. It was great to just have all these ladies, and you know, they're there, and not a big deal is made about it, but it's not just this unending sausage fest like some of the Star Wars books have felt. I liked pretty much all our mains, except for Han. They didn't always have a lot to do and a lot to say, but I do believe that Allen had a pretty good grasp on the main trio and how they talk and how they sound, and that came across here. Han, though, Han is like really grouchy. I mean, maybe I can understand why he was in prison, then he had to crawl through a tunnel, then he was on a very bad spaceship, and then he had a crash landing, and so he's frustrated, he's angry, but he's just so grouchy. And for a book that makes such a big deal about being set on his home world or in his home system, and he's such a big focal point of the books, it's really, I don't know, he's not important at all. And near the end, he talks to Thraken after he's been arrested, and I guess it's sort of a way of him to put that to rest, but I don't know. I was expecting more about his family, more about his upbringing, and it was, other than the revelation that his cousin is evil, we just didn't really get much there. Chewbacca continues to have the thankless task of babysitting the Solo children, who play a pivotal role in stopping things here. I 100% agree with what I said about book 1, that Anakin comes off really young, and he's 7.5 and he can't read. If you're 7.5 in the United States, you're usually in 2nd grade, at which point, yes, you can read. So that confused me. That confused me a lot. We have stories in my family of the time that one of my little cousins couldn't read and accidentally erased everything on a video game, and I was trying to explain to him that, no, you can't play that level because it's gone now. But when that happened, he was 4. Anakin is almost 8. Why can't he read? And the Solo twins sort of go back and forth between seeming too young to me and then doing tasks that I believe are far beyond what a 9-year-old will be capable of. They have times that they just seem like Anakin, sort of babyish, but then at the same time, they fly the Falcon and Jaina's shooting at people, and I don't know how this meshes for me. I have mentioned before that I love Kendra. I think she's a really great character, but in books 2 and 3, she really didn't have much to do. In this book, she's waiting until the interdiction field drops. The interdiction field drops. She travels through light speed to Centerpoint Station, and then she just sits there until Lando picks her up right before the battle starts. I would say that I'm excited to see what happens next with Kendra, but I know from my recollections of the Bantam books that are to come that no one really does anything with Kendra. I loved the introduction to her. I'm sure that she and Lando will get along great. It's just, there wasn't a super lot there. While I enjoyed the introduction of Gariel Captison in the second book because I thought it brought up some really interesting things with Luke and basically, you know, how to be an adult, how to interact with someone that you almost had a relationship with, behave in a grown-up way, be able to accept what could have been but what didn't happen. But in this one, Gariel, she's pretty much set as the diplomat, but she doesn't really get any diplomatic things to do, but it all culminates in her death on the intruder. I would say that her death was to create pain for Luke, but we don't get Luke's reactions in the moment. Really only the person that we get the reaction to when it happens is Lando and Kendra, and they're like, oh shoot, the intruder, oh no. And then we get Luke's thoughts in the epilogue about how he had promised her daughter that he would keep her mother safe, but that didn't happen. It was shocking, but it also felt unnecessary. This is a tough battle. We have to show that not everyone's gonna make it, so Gariel, who's a widow with a small child, must die. I remember back in the day being very upset about this and writing a fan fiction in which Gariel's ghost visits her daughter one last time, which wasn't good, but clearly I didn't feel that there was proper resolution the first time that I read this. I like Belinda Kalinda. She's an intelligence officer. She was, you know, very likable and you were rooting for her in book 1, but in book 3, once again, not much going on. She and Gariel accompany Luke and Lando when they go to Centerpoint Station, but neither of them are important. It's Jenica who provides them with all the information, and then perhaps not so strangely, Lando, who's very knowledgeable about how to get through polluted air okay. And even then, Gariel is hurt, her dress catches on fire, and it just feels like, why? Why her? Why? Lando has a lot to do, but I almost question the level of knowledge he has about certain things. He understands, like I said before, polluted air and then physics to a degree that I'm almost wondering where Lando would have picked up this knowledge. He's a businessman. I never got the sense that he was any sort of scientist, but I'll let that slide. However, what I will not let slide is the abuse that Lando and Jenica and even the Bakuran Admiral rained down on C-3PO. Does Alan hate C-3PO? Because it seems like everyone else does, and they're constantly really mean to him. Perhaps he wanted to go for sort of the relationship that Han has with 3PO, where he annoys him, but Lando doesn't have that history with him, and so for him to just constantly being like, oh, can we leave that droid behind? Can you shut it up? Can we jettison it? Where's this coming from? I can at least understand the Bakuran Admiral because Bakura as a society was sort of anti-droid, but we meet Jenica and pretty soon she's also like hating on C-3PO, so I don't understand that. I'm also a little confused about why Mara was willing to join in on the final battle with them. I mean, I don't really have a problem with this. I think that would be something she would do just fine. But we had this sort of weird explanation where it says she would come into the Corellian system with 2 other people, her navigator and her pilot, and they're gone and they're probably dead, so she's doing this for them. And I was like, oh, wait. Yeah, she did have 2 crew members. Where did they go? Literally, we saw them in ambush at Corellia and then boom, and so I guess they're dead, and that's her reason for fighting. Which brings me to the climax. Did I feel like the climax was enough? That it fulfilled all that setup we got in the previous 2 books? Not really. It pretty much boils down to 2 things. Centerpoint Station is going to fire and destroy another solar system, so we need to use the repulsors on Drawl to stop that. Apparently, if you fire the repulsor at the same time as Centerpoint Station's firing its repulsor, you can stop it. And the only person who could do that is 7.5-year-old Anakin Solo, because somehow the controls are now cued into his DNA and he's the only one who can touch it. And on the other hand, we have all the ships from Socoria showing up, and there's 80 of them, and there's only 3 Bakuran ships, and then Lando, Han, Mara's ship, and Luke's X-Wing, and they've just got to hold them off and get them going in a certain direction till Source A shows up. Source A is obviously Admiral Akbar. We don't find that out till he shows up, but since they were saying that Source T in Book 2 was Tendra, the only A I know is Akbar. I had already concluded it was Akbar before he showed up, so I don't know, it's not particularly exciting. You know that nothing's going to happen to our main trio. You figure that nothing's going to happen to Lando, and yeah, I assume that nothing was going to happen to Mara Jade because she's competent. But they're essentially for an hour just fighting ships, moving here, fighting ships. And it's not exciting in the way that some of the fight scenes in previous books have been. It's not a dogfight. It's not strategic moving. It's not anything that Thrawn would have done, or even that like Rogue Squadron would have done. It's literally just shooting people and flying here, and shooting people and flying here. And it culminates in the Intruder, the Bakuran main ship, getting rammed by robot ramming ships, and they blow up and take 3 Triad Sicorian ships with them, which there's 80 ships, and you just take 3 with you? It wasn't particularly exciting, and the fact that it took up only 1 chapter meant that I felt it was over too fast. There was all this buildup, and then it's over in a chapter, and we get to the epilogue, and it's just like, yeah, it's all fine and dandy now, everything will be good, oh, hope Lando and Tendra get together. It's not just that I needed more resolution for Gariel's death, but I guess I needed more resolution for everything. And the idea that Anakin would recalibrate, re-aim the repulsor all on his own and fire at the exact moment and stop the blast from going off, yeah, that was a little hard for me to swallow too. And that's another thing. The bad guy from Book 1 seems to be the Human League run by Thrackan Sal Solo. We find out in Book 2 that he's just a pawn, a minion, who sort of got a little too big for his boots. And the real bad guy is someone else. Well, in this one, we find out that the real bad guy is the Triad from Socoria, but that's it. We don't get really any sense of their aims other than just they want to cause trouble and I guess control Centerpoint Station and the repulsors. But I'm left wondering why. We never even see them. We're just told they're the bad guys. There's no message from them. There's no ultimatum from them. We don't even know the names of the members of the Triad. They're essentially a faceless bad guy. And without a face, it's hard for me to really buy them as this giant threat. 80 ships when there's only 6 ships and little fighters seems bad, but 80 ships... What are the ships? They're just like small ships. I don't know. I'm wondering, like, what the Triad was doing and what their aims were and how they thought this was going to succeed and, like, how long had they been working on this? And then we get to the mythology behind the Corellian system. Basically confirmed that this is a created system, an unknown civilization moved all the planets into place. And then we find out in this one that Centerpoint Station is a hyperspace repulsor which could pull the planets through hyperspace to the Corellian system. Okay, but Centerpoint Station is a giant space station that's actually a repulsor, and it's the size of a small planet. When Han saw the Death Star in the first Star Wars movie, and Obi-Wan said, "That's no moon, that's a space station," and Han was like, "The space stations aren't that big." It's real hard for me to believe him now, knowing that he had a space station in his own home system that you could probably see from the night sky that was even bigger than the Death Star, that was the size of a small planet. I guess he was like, oh, space stations aren't that big, except for Centerpoint Station, but yeah, that's always been there. Alan sort of leaves it open-ended in the epilogue that, you know, it might be centuries until they figure out what was going on with the Corellian system and how it was created and why, which is cool. I mean, I don't think anyone in the Bantam era is really gonna use that, but he's left it open-ended. Unfortunately, if you have read some of the later Star Wars Legends stuff, particularly the books that come after the New Jedi Order books, you'll learn that apparently Centerpoint Station and the Corellian system and all that was these hive mind insects, and there's also a space station inside the Maw, that group of black holes from the Jedi Academy trilogy, and it was all put in place to contain Abeloth, who is a not dark side, not light side, just straight up chaotic being. So, ultimately, did I feel like Showdown at Centerpoint was worth all the setup that we got in the previous two books? Not really. The back cover says it's an explosive conclusion, but it didn't feel particularly explosive to me. I 100% agree that I do not think this needed to be a trilogy. This could have been 2 books. Honestly, this maybe could have been 1 book, but I'll allow 2 books. I just wish that the climax was longer, more exciting, that we got more resolution, that maybe a previous character wasn't almost needlessly killed so that we had, you know, a shocking death that showed the cost of war. And I'm not so sure that the Solo children should have played such a pivotal part, but I'm glad that Mara Jade was back. I'm glad that she finally was trusted in book 3 and got to be there in the final fight with the rest of them. So I love my girl Mara. I'm glad that she finally wasn't done dirty in this book. So next I will be reading the second book in the informal Callista trilogy, Darksaber by Kevin J. Anderson.